Hey everybody, been another busy week of basketball up and down the East Coast. And man, we've got it all covered right here on Chase for the Championship. No more cupcakes. We're now halfway through January, and this is where the schedule starts to get serious. Every single team in the ACC had a big game or two this week. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, we got some familiar names here starting to move up to the top of the ACC standings, but that doesn't mean we're not seeing some big upsets and surprises. And the biggest surprise of the week, Clemson Tigers, man. Joining us now to take a closer look at that Tigers' huge wins over Duke at home and UNC in the Dean Dome, WSBA's Pete Yannity, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that started it all back in West Virginia. Let's start with tonight's Tuesday night's classic at Little John Coliseum. How the Tigers upset the Blue Devils, man?
I'll tell you what they did was they attacked the basket. They outscored them in the paint by 38-34. And most importantly, they've been hitting shots. Frankly, the past two games especially, they're on a three-game winning streak, but they've suddenly been hitting from long range. They're averaging 40% from beyond the arc in their wins against North Carolina and Duke, and that's been the real story. And keep in mind, on the road against North Carolina, they don't come back unless they hit their threes. And against Duke, they blew a 9-point lead, but it was a couple of three-pointers that enabled them to jump out to that. And then they came back in that game, quite frankly, simply attacking the basket down the stretch.
Junior Amir Sims led the way for the Tigers in points, rebounds, and assists in both of Clemson's win in the last week. How crucial is he to the Tigers' success, not just them, but down the stretch?
I think you could make the argument, maybe flip the coin between him and Tevin Mack. And it's interesting, in these past two wins, the guys who should be leading them in scoring have been Sims, Mack, and John Newman. Each has been between like 14 and 25 points in those games. Sims is interesting because he's a 4, but he does step out pretty well, whereas Mack is kind of more of a 3. Maybe even he could get away playing a big guard. But Sims is obviously a very important guy, but it would be hard to say that he's more important than Mack, because Mack's the guy they need to score consistently every night, because he's probably more reliable both on the wing and taking it to the basket.
Always good to have guys that can get it done. Always good to have versatility, too. But let's go back to Saturday here when Clemson got their first win in, 60 tries in Chapel Hill, 59 and 59 up there over UNC. How important to the Tiger season was getting over that hump?
It was gigantic. And, the post-game news conference, Brad Brownell tried to downplay it and saying, it's not something we talk about around Clemson all that much. Well, one, because it doesn't involve football.
Right.
But secondly, trust me, when that game is coming up, it gets a lot of chatter. Now, what's kind of minimized that is that the way the ACC schedule has been set up with the expanded league is that Clemson, unlike previous years, doesn't go to Chapel Hill every year. So they've had some breaks in that streak, either, being extended or being talked about. It was really huge, and I'll give you some added perspective to that. You've got Wofford College, Southern Conference School, which is based in Spartanburg, and their past two trips to Chapel Hill, they've come away with 4-point wins each time, and one in Carmichael and one in the Dean Dome, and they were only the fifth non-ACC team ever to win in Carmichael, and they're probably one of the few non-conference teams that can claim a win in both Carmichael and the Dean Dome. But in December, on December 15th, when Wofford went up there and won that game, suddenly that just dropped an anvil of added pressure, I think, to the whole Clemson thing, because, there's Wofford going and doing it twice in a row. But gigantic win. Frankly, I think that game said more about North Carolina than it did about Clemson, and the fact that North Carolina's up by 10 on the home court with 2 minutes to go. That's a game you got to put away. But huge win, had the kind of celebration as if they just, won a conference championship, and it was pretty rightfully so. You could say that was one of the really big boxes checked for Brad Brownell.
I was always a Al Davis, just win, baby kind of guy. Get the wins where you could take him there, man. Yeah. Clemson's now won 3 in a row. Can they keep that success going at NC State and against Wake Forest at home?
I think the NC State game Saturday will really give you the best litmus test about this Clemson team. And I say that because Duke had shown some leaks during their winning streak, which Clemson ended at 9 in a row. They'd had a tough time at Georgia Tech, which is probably, when all is said and done, comparable to Clemson. And maybe you could say maybe they're a little bit better simply because they went in and just blew North Carolina off the floor in their home court. And their game against Duke down the stretch could have gone either way. And obviously Clemson beat Duke. But I think the game in Raleigh will be big because now you're seeing a team you played just 2 weeks ago when you beat. And in that game, Clemson used slip screens constantly throughout the game. They had some time to prepare for that ball game, and they decided to revamp what they were doing offensively. And so you win that game, and now I really think you can start to believe. It's going to say a lot. But you have to realize, I mean, a month ago, this season was unraveling. They had a 5-game stretch. They won just 4 of those games, a 5-game home stretch, won just 4 of those games. One of the losses was to Yale. Good Ivy League school. They may make the tournament this year, but again, that's a game you got to take care of business at home. And you thought, wow, this is a team that might have a hard time winning 10 or 11 games. Now suddenly here they are, back to 500 in the league. And, you know, they win Saturday. Now you're over 500. And suddenly now the schedule starts to look like where you can start picking some games off and saying that probably can now be a win.
Nothing like getting hot at just the right time. Thank you, Pete Yannity. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on those surprising Tigers. Take care, man. All right, Coach K said after that Clemson game that the Blue Devils played much better in the second half and that his players worked hard. But he says missed layups and missed free throws came back to haunt him, and that Clemson deserved to win that bad boy. It's Duke's first loss in ACC play. Coach K said it's a good lesson for the Blue Devils going forward.
You know, our kids have to understand how hard it is to win. And we've been winning, and they've been terrific. But when you're in conference, all these games, people are hungry. And if you win a lot, sometimes you're not as much as the other team. And I thought that's how the game started.
Well, those Blue Devils look to bounce back from that loss on Saturday evening when they host Louisville at 6. Then Duke will stay at home to take on Miami on Tuesday. That's at 9 o'clock. And as of the time at the top of the rankings, Louisville dropped out of the top 10 after back-to-back losses over the holidays. But as WEHT's Randall Parmalee reports, the Cardinals are getting back on track. Randall?
Well, don't look now, but after a small 2-game losing streak, the Louisville Cardinals have now won 3 in a row. The last 2 were road games. A tough 3-point win at Notre Dame last weekend, followed up with another gritty win Tuesday night at Pitt. It wasn't a thing of beauty, but Louisville survived an upset bid from the Panthers, beating Pitt in overtime. 73-68 was the final. It was a night in which the Cards had to come from behind. Get this, Pitt led for 33 minutes, and it was definitely a defensive slugfest. Jordan Nwora limited to only 14 points. That's one of his lowest scoring nights of the season. Dwayne Sutton added 13 for U of L. Up next for the Cards, it's another road game, and this will be a tough one. They will be at Duke on Saturday. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmalee.
Good stuff as always, Randall. That big showdown at Duke tips off at 6 on Saturday evening. Like he said, then the Cardinals are going to be heading back to home to the KFC Yum Center to host Georgia Tech on Wednesday at 7. And after coming up just short against Louisville, Pitt will stay at home for 2 games over the next week. They'll start the weekend off against North Carolina on Saturday at noon. And then the Panthers host Boston College on Wednesday. That one tips off at 9. And Florida State, they are in the top 10, and they could move up even higher in a few days here. In fact, they haven't lost since they went to Indiana at the beginning of December. That is crazy to think about. WMBB's Courtney Mims is covering the red-hot Seminoles. Courtney?
The number 9 Florida State Seminoles picked up their 8th straight win on Wednesday night. They took on the reigning national champions, the Virginia Cavaliers, and beat them 54-50. Well, the Noles did not have the easiest time against the Hoos, especially their defense. At the end of the first, they were only leading by 7, and Virginia actually outscored the Noles in the second half, 26-23, but it wasn't enough for them to beat those red-hot Seminoles. Florida State's Devin Vassell led the team with 18 points. He also had 5 rebounds and 3 assists. But senior Trent Forrest led the team in rebounds and assists for the evening with 7 in both of those categories. Florida State head coach Leonard Hamilton said after the game that this team is in a good place mentally. They still have that empty feeling of coming up short last year. The Noles now improved to a 15-2 record overall and have a conference record of 5-1. Up next for Florida State, they're going down south for another ACC matchup to take on the Miami Hurricanes. Reporting on Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
Thank you, Courtney. The Seminoles have just one game in the next week. They'll travel down to Miami, like she said, to take on the Canes on Saturday afternoon at 1. Now, that loss to Florida State was Virginia's third in a row. They'll look to right the ship when they visit Georgia Tech for an 8 o'clock tip-off Saturday night. Then it's a quick turnaround to a home game against NC State on Monday at 7. WRIC's Natalie Calabate takes a closer look at the Cavs' recent struggles.
Guys, for the first time since November 2017, the Virginia Cavaliers are out of the AP Top 25. UVA dropped both of its games this week, falling to Syracuse at home on Saturday, then losing on the road to number 9 Florida State on Wednesday. Against the Orange, Kihei Clark made the tying free throws for UVA with 1:21 left, but missed the potential game-winning shot with 5 seconds left in regulation. Syracuse then started overtime with a 7-0 run to avenge a loss in the season opener. The final score from JPJ, 63-55 Orange. Virginia coach Tony Bennett knows that Clark is shouldering a heavy burden this year.
I told him before, your plate is full and it's overflowing in terms of what's required of you for us to probably be successful in a lot of games. You've got to guard, you've got to handle the ball, make decisions, score. And I said, it's tough. And I said, at times you're going to struggle and it'll look rough. At times it's going to look really good. I said, but I promise you it's going to be one of the absolute best things for your future as a player.
The Hoos did their best to bounce back on Wednesday in Tallahassee. After a first half full of runs, Virginia took a 37-35 lead with 11:30 to go on a Clark jumper. The Cavaliers led with 3 minutes to go, but a 10-3 Seminoles run led to the 54-50 final. Mamadi Diakite led UVA with 16 points, and Braxton Key added 9 points. Still, Bennett is looking at the big picture.
Those things sting. But you look at it and say, all right, we'll take some of the positives and move on and keep trying to grow. And I think our inexperience shows at times, and it's a lot, but they didn't back up in terms of their effort and trying to stay in it where they could have. So we'll build on that.
Virginia now continues its southern road swing at Georgia Tech on Saturday. Tip-off is at 8 o'clock. Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabat.
Well, Syracuse got off to a little bit of a rough start when ACC play got underway back at the start of the year, but now the Orange have won 2 in a row. They beat Virginia in OT over the weekend, and as WSYR's Darius Joshua reports, they came back home to blow out the upstart Boston College Eagles.
The saying goes, it's not over until it's over. But about 15 minutes into this one, it was pretty clear what the end result would be. Syracuse absolutely dominates Boston College from start to finish to pull its conference record back to 500. SU allowed just 13 first-half points from BC. It's the lowest total they've allowed in a half since allowing 16 to Arkansas State last season. And after the Orange got up big, it never looked back.
I thought our defense was really good in the first half and got them out of position, and then as the half went on, they got some shots. They just couldn't make any. And, we were able to get our offense going. And, that was the difference.
First half, we made every rotation. There wasn't really many slip-ups or easy baskets. If they got it, it was kind of a second chance or whatever like that. But we were on all of our rotations.
I was able to get to the lane a couple of times at fast break, make 2 layups, and that kind of just got me going and the team going. Defensively, we were more active, I thought, getting steals, and it just opens the court up for everyone else.
I think Buddy played really good. He played really good in the first half. He made open shots, and we got some good rebounds. We stopped them, so when we stopped them, they couldn't score. We stopped them, and we did a good job of scoring ourselves.
While Elijah Hughes did finish with 19 points, he missed about 4 minutes of first half action with a rib injury. After the game, he said it did hurt, and at times it was hard to breathe, but he thinks he'll be ready to go for the next contest against Virginia Tech. That matchup with the Hokies is a rematch of just last Tuesday's contest when Virginia Tech came into the Dome and topped Syracuse 67-63. Saturday's game tips off at noon down in Blacksburg. Covering Syracuse, I'm Darius Joshua.
Very much, Darius. And after that game on the road to Virginia Tech on Saturday, the Qs are going to hit the road for a trip to South Bend. take on Notre Dame. That one is at Wednesday at 7. And after that big loss at Syracuse, Boston College is also going to be on the road for their next 2 games. The Eagles will visit Wake Forest on Saturday for a 6 o'clock tip, and then they'll play at Pittsburgh on Wednesday. That one tips off at 9. And NC State, one of 5 teams, just 5 teams, at an even 3-3 in conference play so far this year. A little bit of a logjam in the middle. But as WNCN's Todd Gibson reports, the Wolfpack are looking to get some momentum going now that they got one of their big contributors back in the lineup. Todd?
For the first time in 4 games, NC State has its leading scorer and rebounder back. C.J. Bryce didn't put up big numbers, 6 points, 5 assists. That's okay with him. He was just happy to be back on the court.
I couldn't wait to get back on the court. Just knowing that my guys are out there, and they're lacking a piece of the team. Especially with me being a senior to this team, it's something that it was kind of discouraging to me a little bit, sitting out. But for me to be back, it's special for me, and I just want to get back to building with these guys.
He just gives us a whole different look. Our whole team a different look. Playing inside out and things like that. He's also another great scorer. He can create his own shots and things like that. And other guys involved, so I'm definitely glad to have him back.
Missed him on the warm-ups, in the huddles. It's just a lot of little stuff that he does with our team that just felt weird without him being there. So it was great to have him back.
I haven't had this full team together for majority of our losses, which is tough because you wonder if you had them, would you have lost the game? We wouldn't be able to tell by that, but certainly we want to try to get these guys together and build on it and mature from it. That's what I want this group to do. They've got to grow up fast. The ACC comes at you really fast. The games come at you really fast, and I need them to grow up.
Next up for the Wolfpack is Triangle Killer Clemson. The Tigers already have wins over UNC and Duke and a win over NC State on January 4th. The Wolfpack looking to avoid the season sweep on Saturday. At PNC Arena, covering the Wolfpack, I'm Todd Gibson.
Well, that rematch against Clemson tips off at 2 on Saturday afternoon, and State won't get much rest after that when they visit Virginia on Monday. That one is at 7. And after their trip to Raleigh, Miami will return home to take on their in-state rivals, Florida State, on Saturday afternoon. That one's at 1. And then they'll head back to Central North Carolina to take on Duke. That one is a Tuesday at 9.
Nobody's going to feel sorry for North Carolina, and it's okay.
And that's UNC head coach Roy Williams after his team's 3rd straight loss over the weekend. The Tar Heels have now lost 7 of their last 9 and haven't won a conference game since opening night against Notre Dame. Joining us now live to talk about how the Tar Heels can stop their free fall is WNCN's Alyssa Ray. And Alyssa, the Heels had a 10-point lead over Clemson at halftime on Saturday. Short and sweet. What happened?
Well, they led with 12.1 seconds left in regulation. Roy Williams called a timeout before Brandon Robinson sinked 2 free throws to get the 3-point lead. But in that timeout, Williams forgot to tell his team to foul. So play continued with the clock winding down. Clemson hits a 3 to tie it and go into overtime. The Tigers had momentum, got the win in OT. Williams took the blame for this loss for not telling his guys to foul.
I've had some great moments as a coach, and I'd say that right now this is my lowest one because losing this game was my fault. Told them if I die tomorrow or 20 years from now, that'll be the biggest regret I have in 32 years as a coach, because these kids really need to win, and their coach let them down today.
You know, Alyssa, I've seen that before. Am I the only one that thinks he just needs a hug?
Yeah.
Am I the other one?
He does. He does.
Definitely. Well, one bright spot in that game on Saturday was the game by Brandon Robinson, the senior, 27 points, including a 5 for 13 day from behind the arc. I mean, what's this losing streak like for the seniors on this team?
Well, the veterans on this team know this is not the norm for Carolina basketball. After the loss to Pittsburgh last week, we heard from a few of the players in the locker room, veterans and freshmen. None of them felt that this was the end. None of them felt like this was their identity, but all of them were optimistic they can get the season back on track.
After this year, I'll never be able to put on a Carolina basketball jersey again. So I'm grateful for it. Even though this is like a hard time for me right now, I'm still grateful for all the experiences I go through, because I came here for one reason, and that was just to play for Coach Williams, play for North Carolina, and I'm living out my dream. So even through tough times, you got to look at the bright side of things. I'm a North Carolina basketball player. A lot of people would trade to be in my spot right now, even though we're not winning as much. everybody could say they want to be a North Carolina basketball player.
He makes a good point there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, the Tar Heels are at Pitt on Saturday. Of course, the Panthers beat UNC in Chapel Hill a week ago. But can the Heels avenge that loss and get Roy Williams that historic win that he's been looking for, and quite honestly, we've all been looking for since the start of the year?
We have been, and I think they will win on Saturday. The Tar Heels lost to the Panthers by 8, but it was really Carolina's game to lose. They led by as many as 14 points, went into halftime up by 9, but the second half slide could be contributed to the Heels' 18% shooting from three-point range. There could be an answer to all of this, though, and that is Cole Anthony. The star freshman is still out with an injury. No word as to when he will return, but when he does, that could be the spark this team needs. Also worth noting, the UNC Athletic Department released a statement saying that Brandon Robinson was involved in a car accident last weekend. He is okay. The accident was not his fault, but they are unsure whether he will practice this week or play in the game on Saturday. If he does not play, that would be a big hit to North Carolina. Chris?
Thank you, Alyssa, as always. See, that's the kind of reporting you're going to get right here. We're talking about people that are there in the field, not sitting off in a studio taking in feeds that may or may not have talked to the teams. Thank you, Alyssa
I was
Ray.
there.
Exactly.
Thanks, Chris.
Bringing the stats, facts, and figures, always making it where. There you go. Hey, exactly. Now, Roy Williams said, and she walks out. She said no one's going to feel sorry for North Carolina, but if they don't win that one Saturday, they might start getting some sympathy, that's for sure. But after back-to-back losses, Notre Dame managed to stop the bleeding in Atlanta last night. WTTV's Chris Widlick reports on the Irish's critical matchup at Georgia Tech. Chris?
A decent week for the Fighting Irish despite breaking even. Last weekend, Mike's Braves boys dug a hole against Louisville at the Joyce Center, falling behind by 16 in the first half, but Notre Dame roared back behind John Mooney, the double-double machine, actually pushing the Irish into the lead. But down the stretch, there was no stopping Cardinal star Jordan Nwora. 20 game-high points, while the Irish backcourt was shooting blanks. A defensive struggle goes the way of the Cards, 67-64, dropping the Domers to 1-4 in ACC play. Well, that set up a critical road contest in Atlanta last night, and yet another nail-biter, but this time, victory. The Irish built a 7-point edge in the first half against Georgia Tech, then had to rally from 6 down, and they did it behind their guards this time. Prentice Hubb led the way with a career-high 25. TJ Gibbs added 17 more, and Notre Dame made its free throws down the stretch for a 78-74 win. A good time for a break in the schedule now.
NC State, we couldn't finish. Louisville Saturday, heartbreaking. We come back, we're up 4. We couldn't finish. I thought it was really important as I'm watching the game unfold, like, we really need to finish this one. Because if you lose a third in game situations and you're 1 in, 5, so I think we can grow again here with this one.
The Irish have the weekend off before hosting Syracuse on Wednesday. Covering the Irish, I'm Chris Widlick.
Later. And the Irish had plenty of time to recover after that contest at Georgia Tech. They're not back in action until next Wednesday night when they host Syracuse for a 7 o'clock tip-off. And Georgia Tech, meanwhile, is going to have to prepare to host Virginia on Saturday night at 8. Then they'll travel to Louisville to face the Cardinals on Wednesday. That one tips off at 7. And Virginia Tech, they are building some serious momentum right now. Serious momentum. They've won 3 in a row, and they're up to 4th place in the ACC. And as WFXR's Jermaine Fell reports, the Hokies are proving a lot of doubters wrong.
You would have to say the Virginia Tech Hokies men's basketball team, they are the pleasant surprise in the ACC this year. Picked to finish 14th in the league, Tech is showing they will not be in the basement of the ACC. Now, last Saturday, the Hokies resuming ACC play at Castle Coliseum, taking on the North Carolina State Wolfpack. And Landers Nolley II scoring 29 points. Tyrese Radford added a career 18 points to lead the Hokies to a 72-58 victory over NC State. Virginia Tech fell behind 10-0 to start the game after the Wolfpacks hit 4 of their first 7 shots. But following a timeout, the Hokies answered with a 13-0 run and never trailed again. And head coach Mike Young praising Radford's performance.
He's just so aggressive. He's just such a strange matchup. And that better be a man that's guarding him, because he's going to lower his head and he's going to get places that, quite a few people can't get to. And he's got a nice, touch around the basket. He does a nice job of getting fouled for us. He's quickly becoming, and has here for a couple of weeks now, one of those guys that, he affects winning, and it's hard to take him off the floor.
Meanwhile, seeking a fourth straight victory over Wake Forest, Virginia Tech took down the Demon Deacons 80-70 on Tuesday night inside Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Tech led this game by as many as 20 points, and the Hokies have now defeated Wake also for the third straight time in Winston-Salem. Redshirt freshman Tyrese Radford balling shot calling recorded his second ever double-double with a career-high 21 points and 13 rebounds. Meanwhile, redshirt freshman Landers Nolley the second also scoring 21 points. In fact, Nolley earned his 5th ACC Freshman of the Week honor, and the North Carolina native Jalen Cone put up 15 points. Now, Mike Young is also the first Hokie head coach to win 3 out of his first 4 ACC road games.
Again, I continue to say it. Nothing is going to surprise me with this team. They have a level of confidence, and it's a great team in terms of preparation, and that's pretty unique and pretty special. I've had some young teams that were, a little goofy and needed to grow up some, and would leave some things on the floor that you needed to handle a certain way. This team, you give it to them, and they've got it.
Definitely, it's just building more confidence as we go, getting these road wins. I know we got a big one coming up, Syracuse. They're coming back for vengeance, so that's going to be another tough game on us. But I feel like these wins on the road against other conference teams is building confidence in us and showing us what we can do.
Now, Virginia Tech, after their 2-0 week, they improved to 13-4 overall and 4-2, there it is, 2 fingers, in the ACC. Now, the Hokies on a 3-game winning streak will look for the season sweep, get those brooms out against Syracuse when they take on the Orange this Saturday at noon at Castle Coliseum. Then on Wednesday night at 8, the Hokies host the North Carolina Tar Heels. Covering the Virginia Tech Hokies, I'm Jermaine Farrell.
Thanks a lot, Jermaine. As always, loving the look, my brother. And Wake Forest headed in the opposite direction after their loss to the Hokies. The Demon Deacons going to look to avoid a 4-game losing streak when they take on Boston College in Winston-Salem on Sunday at 6. Then they'll hit the road 2 days later for a showdown with Clemson on Tuesday at 8. WGHP's Danny Hardit is taking a closer look at how the Deeks are working to improve.
Brandon Childress, Sean D. Brown, Olivier Sarr, Andrian White, the top 4 scorers for Wake Forest, all upperclassmen. However, the Deacons, well, they're looking to get more out of the younger guys, more points, more rebounding, more energy. But for some young players, it takes time to totally adjust to the college game after it came so easy for them in high school. And it's more than just playing on the court, it's paying attention to details, like a scouting report.
Our freshman class, they're picking it up. They're understanding the value of the scouting report and what we're trying to accomplish. And, they're doing a good job. Now, could we all be doing better? Absolutely. But for the most part, it's been a learning curve for them. I tell people all the time, I said, every game our guys play, or any game any student athlete plays, that's equivalent to a test in their class. We got a study guide. You got to prepare. And, so that's kind of the mindset.
Grad transfer Andrian White is a key part of the Deacons after playing 3 years at Charlotte. He was asked which team he rooted for while coming up the ranks.
Pretty much whoever my brother was playing for, so I think, I was a big...
That's like 3 or 4 different choices there.
Yeah, I was a big Kansas fan at one time. Then I was following Nebraska for a little bit, and then finished up a little bit with Syracuse when he was there, so now I'm a Wake fan.
Next up for Wake Forest, a home game Sunday night against Boston College, a 6 o'clock tip-off from the Joel Coliseum in Winston-Salem. Covering the Wake Forest Deacons, I'm Danny Harnden.
Well, there are no more undefeated teams in ACC play. Kind of hard to believe. And this season is becoming more unpredictable than ever. So joining us now to help us shake down some of those numbers is Jason Logan from Covers.com. And everybody's got their eyes on Louisville's visit to Duke on Saturday. Will the Blue Devils' loss fuel them in that big top 25 matchup is my question.
Yeah, Duke extremely good win coming off a loss, actually. 50-8 since 2011-12, win coming off a defeat, which is not really that surprising given the quality of this program. However, that is an 86% win rate when coming off a loss compared to 79% when coming off a win. When we flip it and look at the betting numbers behind that, they're just 32, 25, and 1 ATS in that same span when coming off a loss, still covering 56% of the time. Duke really just didn't do the little things against Clemson. They didn't take care of the basketball, very careless, 15 turnovers. They went just 10 for 20 from the foul line as well. You cannot leave points on the table against this Louisville team, and you can't make those mistakes because the Cards are going to turn them into buckets really, really quickly. I do expect a more focused Duke team when they come back to Cameron here. It's going to be one hell of a game.
Yeah, I can't wait for it either. Upset team, if you will, going to come back and get them. Now, Pitt is just 2-4 in ACC play, but they're giving the big teams all that they can handle. The Panthers beat UNC a couple of weeks ago, nearly knocked off Louisville in OT. My question is, Pitt faces the Tar Heels again this weekend. Can they do it again, or is UNC going to get some paybacks on them?
Yeah, well, we've talked about UNC struggles at length here, and we definitely did give them the kiss of death when we mentioned that 59-game home winning streak over Clemson last week. But again, it was second-half struggles that killed North Carolina. They allowed 41 points to Clemson in that second half, eventually losing in overtime. They gave up 45 points, and that collapsed to Pitt in Chapel Hill. For this game, you almost have to take the names off the jerseys and just look at the facts and figures, and the team in the powder blue is in trouble. They're 4-12 ATS. That's one of the worst bets in college basketball right now, and they could come into this game at Pitt as a road underdog, which has traditionally not been a great spot for UNC bettors. North Carolina just 19-28-1 ATS, covering just 40% of the time as a betting underdog since 2010-11.
Last one here for you. Syracuse and Virginia Tech going to face off Saturday with fourth place on the ACC, on the line. Can Syracuse get some payback for that loss earlier to the Hokies this month?
Yeah, it was a big win for Virginia Tech. They actually snapped a 6-game losing streak inside the Carrier Dome with that victory. They fired up 36 three-point shots in that game. This is a team that is not shy from hoisting it up from beyond the arc. They average over 27 three-point attempts per game. That's 27th most in the country. And at home, they make 39% of those looks. That's averaged out to about 11.1 three-pointers per home game. That's 9th most in the country. This orange zone, it does plug up the interior, but they have to do a better job of getting their heels above the three-point line and a hand up on those three-point shooters, specifically when they hit the road. Virginia Tech, very, very tough at home, 9-1 straight up at home, 6-4 against the spread as a host. They've gone 3-4 in their last 7 matchups with Syracuse. However, 6-1 ATS in those games. I like the Hokies to come back home and fire away and get this one put away.
Thanks again, Jason. Great stuff as always. We'll see you again next week, man. Well, it's a pretty clear 3 at the top of the ACC standings, but there's not much separation between them and the teams chasing them. Duke, Florida State, and Louisville are all tied for first at 5-1. Then it's Virginia Tech alone at 4-3-2, and it's a logjam at 5th. Syracuse is 3-3, and as you can see, they're not the only ones. Clemson, NC State, Boston College, and Virginia are also even in the conference. Georgia Tech's played an extra game. They come in at 3-4. And it's a 3-way tie for 11th with Miami, Notre Dame, and Pittsburgh all sitting there at 2-4. Then the disappointing UNC Tar Heels are 1-4. Hurting up, but they're coming back. And Wake Forest comes in dead last. They're sitting there at 1-5. That's it. We got no more? Oh, come on, man. Be sure to join us next week. We'll have plenty of big games to talk about. It's a very busy Saturday around the conference with all of the teams at the top of the standings in action. The 9th-ranked Florida State Seminoles are going to look to keep things rolling, but it can be a little tricky to win on Miami's home floor, as we found out. And after you watch that one, you only have to wait a few hours to see a top 25 showdown at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Duke is going to be looking to rebound from that upset at Clemson while they host Louisville. We have got to get more basketball in here. But hey, thanks for joining us for this chase for the championship. Remember, you can watch a new episode every Thursday night at 7. And until then, man, get out there and watch some basketball. See you next Thursday.